Hi, Homeworthy. I'm Bronwyn.
And I'm Ken, and welcome to Linville, North Carolina.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story. I'm Allison Kenworthy, the founder of Homeworthy, and we take you inside the world's most beautifully decorated homes and introduce you to the brilliant people who live there.
Hi, Homeworthy. I'm Liz Lang. Welcome to Grey Gardens.
Click the join button below to access all of our latest episodes ad-free and watch extended cuts of this and other homes, opening the doors to new rooms and exclusive content featuring our beloved hosts.
I can't wait to see. I'm so excited.
And if you're looking to shop items inspired by this and other Homeworthy tastemakers, be sure to use the product links below or scan the QR code on screen to find fabulous furniture, coffee table books, and accessories that can transform your house into a home.
I'm Ken Pursley. I am the CEO and founding partner of the Pursley Dixon Studio, and I'm also an architect. And part of my job is to help shape and direct the projects when they come in the door and create a direction for the architecture.
And I'm Bronwyn Ford, and I'm the Director of Interiors with the Pursley Dixon Studio. And I lead a team of designers who work on both the architecture and the decorative interiors for our firm.
Well, we're in Linville, North Carolina, which is a resort town about 2 hours north of Charlotte. And we're going to be touring a home that we designed and had built. It was finished in 2020, and we did the architecture and the interiors as a firm. Well, this particular client, this was the third project we had done for them. And so in a lot of ways, this house completes their portfolio of houses that they have. And so they live in a colonial revival house. They have another house that's more of a Mediterranean influenced house down in Wellington, Florida. And so this house being in the mountains, we wanted it to represent, their version of what the mountains are. So it is definitely wood, stone, as you'll see, wood shake roofs. But it also has a little bit of an edited and serene undertone to it. So I might say it's even a little bit modern. And so that was something that is different than their other homes, and we really wanted each house to feel a little bit different than the others. And it has a little bit of a darker, moodier feel to it as well.
Describe it as being sort of a warm modernism. And we layered in lots of textures, but also you'll see lots of small patterns and a little bit of color, but it sort of warms things up. So right beside a lot of stone and metal and wood, there's just a lot of softness we added in.
So we're entering now what I guess you would call the Great Hall, but it's really the room central to the house that has the bar, the foyer, the dining, the sitting, a large fireplace. But one thing I would say when you come in, there's this great bench off to the side. And so I love having a place where you can come in, take your shoes off. It's just like a good Southern greeting in some ways, that somebody's here to receive you. But this starts at, you'll notice there's a lower ceiling here, and then the space opens up. So as we walk through, we'll talk about the ceiling heights and the different spaces within the spaces. So this was one of the drivers of the house, was seeing the mountains. So you'll see this is a tall wall of glass focused on Grandfather Mountain and focused on the view. And we really wanted to make sure that was an important part of the home. So this is the tallest ceiling. But then by the fireplace and by the dining room, the ceiling comes down a little bit. The fireplace, I think, is worth pointing out here. So this is a palette you'll see throughout the house, but we've got black and steel, we've got concrete, we've got stone. So this blends that line between being a little bit modern. It's actually kind of an industrial aesthetic that we've introduced to it, but also having a place for the firewood, really trying to accommodate everybody. I love a raised hearth. It's a great place to sit. So we can sit and talk and gather around the fireplace.
And you can imagine that before there was even any furniture in this space, that it probably felt almost a little cold with all of these hard surfaces. But as you can see, as you start to layer in the color, the texture, the warmth from the rug and the fabrics, it really starts to, each piece speaks for itself. And so even though you have these really hard, sharp surfaces, these other pieces in the room help it come to life and really feel like a comfortable place you want to be.
I would say one thing that I've learned, I guess, in my architectural journey is I do love an upward sight line. And so if we look at the view of this room from the southern exposure of the house, I love to see sky and trees, because often when you're working in a site that has a lot of foliage and you're in the woods, it gets kind of dark. And so I've learned by bringing in that light from up high, it really helps to bring a lot more openness and airiness to the house. We also, in this space, used a lighter wood. So we wanted it to be stained, we wanted it to be natural, but it was important that it wasn't dark and foreboding and depressing. So it is a lighter finish that we have on the wood in here.
And you can see too that we used a little bit of a different stain color and different tones on the woods. I mean, with the wood being timber material and then freshly milled material, it's going to stain differently. And so we really had to create that balance between the colors and the wood and the graining around the room. It doesn't all have to be perfectly matched. Earlier, I mentioned how this space is so lofty and there is a lot to fill, but at the same time, there's a lot of architectural detail. And this chandelier we had custom made by Laura Lee Designs, and it is actually 7 feet in diameter. And what's amazing is you bring it into this space and you think it's going to be enormous, and it just absolutely creates this wonderful, like almost a lowered ceiling in a way, but it doesn't impede any views. And I think it's really an interesting focal point in this space. We didn't try to make it overly ornamented. We really wanted it to be very, very simple. One thing about this beautiful view is it's the first thing that you see when you walk into the house. And we felt it was really important to frame this view by putting these drapes on either side of the view. They're sheer drapes. We didn't add any lining to them because we wanted you to almost be able to see through them. So it totally softens all that architecture. You have soft surfaces in the main room, but you really don't have that soft feeling except as it extends up to the ceiling, and it draws your eye upward as well.
And one thing I like decoratively that Bronwyn did with the drapes is it's a 2-story tall, strong vertical element within the room, and I love the power that brings. So it's a strong, simple, bold move within the decorative piece of the house as well.
So you can see we used a pretty uniform palette throughout this entire space. It's divided into a living area and also this dining area. And the floor plan was originally devised by the architects, and they had drawn in this extremely long table here. And the client and I looked for a table that would be perfect for this location, and we couldn't find one that was narrow and long. And so we were inspired by another table, and we had it designed and made by a local woodworker. So since it's such a long table, we didn't want to fill it up with a lot of the same chair. And so we mixed it up, and we have a bench as well as our host chairs and then some armchairs as well. And then we added lumbar pillows, and we added the seat cushion made of vinyl, so it helps with cleanup. So we're going to go to Ken's favorite place, the bar.
And one thing before we go in there, I wanted to point out too, this is another example of the ceiling heights changing. And when we go to the bar in particular, it's the lowest space within the room. So it really is this, I would call it a happy cave that you go into. But also being the architecture nerd, I've got to point out, I also enjoyed the different materials in this room. So we do have the bark in the bar. Originally, it would have been chestnut wood, American chestnut. There was a blight, long story. It's now poplar, but we've got oak beams here that a timber framing company, Carolina Timber Works, put together. Then we have cypress wall boards, and then the bark of the bar. And I love tonally how it's quieter, it's cozier. We actually created this little carve out to make it feel like you're going somewhere special. What's nice is you have the area where there's some liquor displayed, there's a sink, but there's a slot here. This is the owner's wine collection. So it gives a little peekaboo into what's inside. And also to our right, there's all the glasses are hidden behind the scenes. So you'll see in a lot of our work, we think a lot about front stage and backstage. And so there's the part you see, but also the part you don't see. And this bar, I loved how accessible it was to come in, get a drink. And we talk a lot about, rooms that feel good and rooms you want to be in. And I've made the argument that it needs one of four things. It's either going to be the kitchen. Everybody loves the kitchen. It's either it needs a fireplace, it needs a bar, or it needs a TV. And I think not having the bar in this area of the house, I don't know that it would be used as much. And so I do think it creates this sense of energy within the space. And we didn't want it to be front and center, but we did want it to be accessible. And in this case, I think we've made it a really special place.
I've also got to point out this faucet by Sonoma Forge. It's pretty primitive and it resembles an old pump. And I think it's the perfect faucet for this little space.
So when you work with a homeowner, especially over multiple projects, you get to know each other. And at some point, it becomes a symbiotic relationship. And so I would say by the time we're doing this project, we could almost finish each other's sentences. And, this is about the homeowner, but it's a lot about the site. So when we looked at the architecture, we looked at the design, a lot of it was responding to their needs, but a lot of it was responding to the way the house needed to capture the views or capture the light. And you'll see, being so steep, we actually created a lot of drama within the architecture that creates these emotional connections within the house.
And Ken mentioned that we also did a home for them in Florida. And when we worked on that project before, I remember the whole time we were working on this renovation, the homeowner kept talking about, oh, when we do the mountain house, So she finally got to do the mountain house, which, I think she'd been thinking about for quite a while and had been thinking about the furnishings that she'd be able to reuse in this space and the colors we would use. So it was really great to kind of see that progression from doing this Florida house to doing the mountain house next.
So now let's go look at the kitchen. One thing in this house, particularly, the homeowner wanted to separate this living space from the kitchen space. So as we walk back through, you'll see it's an open flowing connection, but you don't look from one space to the other. And that was a little bit unique in our practice these days, that oftentimes people want to have one space where everybody's connected. And in this case, it is a little bit separate, but it does flow easily to the space beyond. So one thing to notice in here is it's a lower ceiling. We've put beams in. It's a much cozier space. It also connects to the porch. So we intentionally don't like to place porches where they block light and views from the living spaces. But in this case, it gives you a nice flow. You can easily go out. We'll cover the porch later and go outside and see that space. So for us, that's an important thing to get that indoor-outdoor connection.
So I've seen the homeowner actually at work in this kitchen, and she loves to cook and she loves to entertain. And she has several daughters, and they'll gather around this island and they'll cook and prepare food. On the other side of the room, we have this wonderful little nook space where we designed a custom banquette and a custom oval table. So people can prep and have a drink of wine while other people are in the kitchen getting ready for dinner.
We've been accused often of doing these, what I'd call non-kitchens. So we love to think about how storage is hidden, what you see, what you don't see. One thing we did here is we actually used stain color to break down the scale of the kitchen. So we've got the tall cabinets here are stained in ebony, and you'll see that in different details throughout the house. We've also used it on the island. So the island has an ebony stain here. And then we stained the internal oak cabinets a little bit lighter here. And you'll see on all of the cabinetry, these vertical patterns. So it's a real simple texture within the kitchen. And even the refrigerator, if we look at this refrigerator wall back here, is all paneling that's vertical, but we've hidden the refrigerator behind here. So when it's closed, it just becomes a texture of wood. And there's similar textures that we're using in other parts of the house.
This enormous light fixture over the kitchen island is by Urban Electric Company, and we had it custom sized in order to be in proportion to this island. We also use urban electric sconces by the banquette to add a little bit of reading light over there.
And something else just to point out, rather than having tile, we did a simple slab backsplash. So it's, again, a simpler, bolder move. But we did allow some pots and pans to be out. We allowed a shelf behind the cooktop. I think with all these homes, you want them to be edited, you want them to be modern and clean, but you don't want them to be cold. And so we left space for these warm moments, or anywhere that we create something very simple and stark like this, we'll even come in with like a carved bracket. So I think for us, that really humanizes the architecture, that it's not all perfect straight lines. It's things that look like they were done and crafted by a person. So it makes it really more of a work of art that's been crafted.
We also didn't have to have a big hood here. As you can see, the ventilation is integrated up into this soffit. It's by Wolf, and it can be that far up, and you use a remote control to turn it on and off.
The other thing to point out, since we're pointing things out, is the ovens. So we tucked the ovens actually in a pantry behind the scenes so that we have a cooktop here, but we didn't take over precious real estate near the cooktop for storage and for cooking, because my personal feelings with ovens, it's really not an active cooking device. You put something in an oven, you set a timer, you go back and find it. So oftentimes we'll take, especially if somebody wants a wall oven, we'll take that, tuck it behind the scenes, and then that aesthetically keeps the kitchen much cleaner, much more edited, because at the end of the day, this is a social space and we wanted it to be beautiful.
One more thing I would like to show you is how we were able to put storage in almost every inch of this island. And so right at the end here, she has a lot of her pottery pieces stored right here. So she has easy access to take them outside onto the porch. I want to show you this breakfast area. So this is carved into, or at least it appears to be carved into this stone wall. And instead of having a built-in banquette, we had this basically a standalone piece of furniture made to fit perfectly into this space tucked in here. So it's easy to slide in, work on your laptop, have food, just have a conversation here. It's just this really wonderfully cozy space. And I think too, with the sconces on the wall, you could sit here and read. It becomes this kind of tucked away corner in the kitchen.
Typically, the architecture will lead the first step in the process, and I look at it as the challenges are also the opportunities. So this lot in particular was a very challenging, steep lot. What I like about that as an architect is oftentimes if we're doing a house in town, there's a blank rectangle with houses on either side, and I feel like to bring a sense of drama or interest, we're reliant on our own creative energies to do that. For a lot that has a great view, especially of the water and the mountains, it becomes our job to really capture and make the most of that within the architecture. So it gives us something to respond to. And I love that about this house, because it was all about taking the opportunities that are here and then making those great assets to make the floor plan interesting and the spaces interesting.
The challenge is actually the fun part, I think, because you have a constraint that you're working with and you're trying to figure out, well, what is in my toolbox this time around to help me make the best of whatever it is, the views. For the interiors, it was all about this lofty space, and how do I make this lofty space feel really cozy? And we had to really consider the scale of all the furniture and everything we put in here. But we also had to make sure that it wasn't overpowering the view, that the view was still the most important piece of art in the room.
And for example, it dictated, we don't typically do taller rooms like this, but because there was an upward sight line and a downward sight line, upward to the mountains, downward to the lake, it dictated a taller space, but we also tried to create alcoves within this larger space. So you'll see there's spaces within spaces, and that was important to us as we were designing the home. So now let's go look at Bronwyn's favorite room.
The porch. So this is what I mean by feeling like you're in a treehouse. It's a beautiful day today. The sun is shining. You can hear the rustle of the leaves in the trees, and you can see how it feels like a tree house out here. I love this space so much. It was collected. These are Janice A.C. sofas, which we paired with several pieces of furniture she had from another mountain house. We also brought in these log holders from Elegant Earth, and it just is so cozy out here with the bark on the fireplace, this large light fixture also by Laura Lee. It just really feels cozy out here, and it's definitely my favorite place in the whole house.
Well, and as we talk about a place having a sense of emotional connection and feeling like you're in a certain location with a certain visceral idea behind it. I mean, we're sitting 50 feet in the air above the ground. One thing we did architecturally that was a little bit of a gymnastics trick was there's actually no corner post. So we wanted when you're sitting down in the view that your view wasn't blocked by the corner architecture. And one funny / scary story that happened out here is we came out the first day as they were framing it. We walked out here and the roof overhang extended about another 2 feet. And we realized, gosh, we can't see Grandfather Mountain. So one of the mountain builders, who was amazing, hopped up on the roof with a saw while we all stood here and sawed off the edge of the roof until the view was enough that we could see the view. And it was one of those scary moments. And I just thought, gosh, they had just trimmed the rhododendron. If he fell off the roof, it would have been a sad day. But he survived, the roof survived, and now we all have a view we can enjoy.
So we collected these pieces. They all sort of come from different sources, but they started with these great Janice A.C. sofas, which I feel like go against this modern feel. They're a little bit more traditional, but in this darker colored wicker, it really gives it more of an edgier vibe and of course fits in with the darker colors on the house. Then these pieces, Ken and I found at an antique fair up in Massachusetts. These chairs the homeowner had at a previous home, which they're just these awesome two-piece chairs, which look like they wouldn't be that comfortable, but they have a perfect angle to the back. Then we bought these concrete pieces from Elegant Earth, and that's where their log storage is. And she has lots of great pots out here. So it adds some green, it adds some warmth, it adds a little bit of color out here as well. So this space, even though it's lofty, it just feels very, very cozy. And it's just where you want to spend time. You definitely feel this connection to the outside and this connection to the mountains being here on this space.
So now go visit Mark's office. So we're going across, this is the open part of the porch where there's sunlight and it lets the light and view into the living space we were in earlier. And now we're going to go to the owner's office. He wanted this door. He enjoys smoking cigars. And I think this might have been a compromise between husband and wife that he would have his own door outside. So it gives him a little sneak through. So now we're entering the owner's office. So he has a very minimal desk with a place to sit, a view of Grandfather Mountain, his own door, again, to go out if he wants to enjoy a cigar. This wonderful, comfortable chair here, again, looking at the mountain view, his own fireplace. And it's a cozy spot for him to sit and think and reflect and read, and TV tucked away. So it has everything he needs.
That's what I love about this room is it's not a big room and you're pretty much in arm's reach of everything that you might need.
And I find in houses, often the smaller the room, the more it's used and the more the space is enjoyed. And this is a great example where bigger is not better. Having this small room, all in wood with the stone, and most importantly, it has a door you can close off so he can have his own private space and be away from everybody when he wants to.
I was very excited when we were talking through his office and the homeowner said, I don't want a typical desk in there. And I said, that's great, because I didn't want a big piece of furniture that might fill up the room and therefore impede this great view.
So I do want to point out the fireplace. So in our studio, we have project architects that work on different jobs, and Mark Klein was the project architect on this job and designed this really great fireplace that I'll slide these back. So it has this vertical shape that you actually stack the logs, upright rather than laying them flat as in a typical fireplace. And then this wood storage right below it. So it's a good example. We talk about mental impressions that a house might leave. This is one of those things. It's not your typical fireplace. It's not the biggest fireplace, but it's a really special, interesting moment within the house.
You'll see there's lots of fireplaces in this house, and we love these cascade coil fireplace screens. They are pretty minimal. They come in a bunch of different finishes. They really do keep the sparks from flying out, and they're simple. We created this bar that mounts into the stone, and then the cascade coil hangs down almost like a drape. This is the homeowner's little reading area. And we picked out this sconce from the Urban Electric Company, and it is perfect here, I think. It's a large fixture, but I like the way it extends out so you can sit under it for reading. We're going to transition over to the primary bedroom. There's this great hallway here with natural light coming through and these built-in bookshelves. Ken, I believe, intentionally made this angled so you don't put a lot of knickknacks on top of it.
You can't put knickknacks on it.
Then we upholstered these doors. Again, there's a lot of wood, a lot of hard surfaces in the house. And so we added this really interesting raffia fabric wrapped around these doors to add some softness into the space.
But I also love how you left some open shelving too, so you can have some warmth and some found objects.
So next we're going to transition over to the primary bedroom, which is a beautiful, stunning space because it has this enormous glass window overlooking the mountains. And I think that this room would be one that I would love to wake up in every day. I probably love to go to sleep in here as well.
And I believe it's the only space in the house where we didn't actually do divided light windows. And so the effect of that is that it reads like a portrait. And so it's almost like you've got the view of the mountains and the view of the water all framed within the architecture of the house.
And we did the same thing in here that we did in the great room with the draperies and made them this vertical gesture going all the way up to the ceiling and even created a pocket so that the drapes seem to extend up forever. But it also keeps light from leaking out because these are blackout drapes. So at nighttime, they can completely close off these windows and won't get any light coming in the morning.
And one nemesis of our architecture that Bronwyn has to deal with is that we love these corner windows that wrap all the way around. So every room turns into a glass-filled bay. The challenge of that is when you're trying to block out a room, handling those corners. I thought she did a great job with this, that the fabrics will lap each other, create a blackout, but during the day you can open it up and get to great views.
Also, this fireplace is the same stacked stone you've seen other places in the house. And what I think is so interesting about this wall is the asymmetry of it. You have the window, you have the drape, and then the fireplace almost seems a little bit off center. And I think the addition of this artwork, which the homeowner picked out, is a beautiful counterpoint to all of that rock and all of that gray stone. And it adds this great punch of color in the room. This seat here is would be my favorite place to be in this entire home. It's a piece that Ken designed for the Catbird collection. And I think that I can't think of a better place to sit and look at the view and read and just be as close to the outside as you possibly can be. We also designed this headboard and had it custom fabricated for this room. As you can tell, it fits perfectly from casing to casing. And we wanted something, again, that wouldn't necessarily compete with the views, but just this really soft, luxurious feel. And there's no artwork on this wall necessarily. It's all about that beautiful shape of the headboard.
Yeah, I like how every chance there was to put something soft in to counterbalance the architecture, the interiors did that, and I think it's very successful.
So now we're going into his and hers primary bathrooms.
So one common thread in all the projects we've done for this client is they always have his and her bathrooms. They're always separate spaces. So we're going to go in her bathroom first.
There is so many interesting things packed into this one bathroom. I absolutely love the way this tub is nestled in here with these little sheer draperies. We have a vanity with the timber faces. And again, another interesting design detail in this space is that to separate the toilet from the rest of the bathroom, she suggested that we put in this upholstered screen, which I think is really nice to, again, add some more softness into this room.
The other thing I'd point out too is the mirrors are integrated with storage behind here, but also this timber frame detail that covers and hides the mirror, which you can see here, adds another element of interest and tells you that you're in the mountains, but it also has these very feminine shapes to them.
So you can definitely tell a change of mood as we come into the husband's bathroom. There's a lot more warm wood colors in here. We framed out both the water closet and the shower in these timbers that we've seen in other parts of the house. One of my favorite things that we did in here is this mirror that hangs on leather brackets. We had those made by a leather maker in Charlotte, Colson and Keene, and they helped us make just the right length and just the right rivets for this custom mirror. So I think that it adds a whole lot of masculinity into this room.
And whereas her bathroom had, carved wood and more silhouette details, this one's more straight line, simpler forms. In that way it's more masculine. Also, I love this glass. It's called Starfire glass, but it's an ionized glass that actually glows white instead of a typical green. But it becomes this really great luminous object within the space. So you get this rough timber against the sleek modern glass, and I love the way those play off each other. Again, the conversation about window and window placement. The house at this point, you're beginning to go subterranean. It's a little bit dug into the side of the mountain. And so when you look out, there's a window that lets you get some light and view, but it's higher. And so it does bring in the best of both worlds. So you get the view, but you're also feeling nestled
In private.
in private.
We have a thing for putting windows behind mirrors, which I actually think is not an odd thing because you get the natural light coming in on your face.
Yeah, I find we've actually gotten a lot of good feedback about, especially during the day, that you get that natural light lighting you in the front. And I think people really like it. And if you can get over the idea that a mirror is in front of a window, which as you can see is actually a pretty interesting feature, and it can become an opportunity for a design element that makes a special moment.
Well, I'd say the design rule that I follow myself is to listen, and listen a lot. Listen to the client, listen to the things they're telling you formally, but listen to what they say informally about things that might bother them, things that they love, artists that they love, places that they travel. I'm constantly trying to get insight into who they are and what makes them tick. And I feel like all of that information is put forth into the design. And listening to the architecture as well. So when the spaces are being designed and when I go to the first site visit and I'm walking through the house, I'm constantly listening to what it's telling me. What does it need here? How's the light coming into the rooms? And just really paying attention to all those details. As far as design tips that I would tell others, I'd probably say never underestimate the power of good lighting. There is a plethora of light bulbs on the market right now, but always choose warm light. It always makes people feel better. It's cozier light, and rely on lamp lighting instead of overhead lighting as much as possible. It can instantly make a space feel more cozy.
Well, I would say for me, there's, our work, at least in my head, all looks very different, but the common thread that's woven through the work would be, I want the people in the homes to feel this emotional connection with the space. So I spend a lot of time, even outside of style, even outside of following some formula, it's what's going to make them feel connected to the place they are. And the other piece of that is I want to create details that leave a mental impression. And so I want to create that little nook that you grew up in and your grandparents owned the house, and you always remember that the rest of your life. And we try to do that within our architecture to create these small moments that, hopefully nobody's ever seen before. And when they leave the house, they remember that bark bar. And they're like, oh my gosh, my grandparents had this house. I had this bark bar. It was really cool. Like, to me, those are the things that add in a layer of richness and depth to a work of architecture and into somebody's home to really personalize it in a way that you feel that emotionally. And so that's something that I think about as being paramount to all the other intellectual exercises you might do as an architect or a designer. So now let's go visit the guest suite. And we've just been in the primary bedroom, and we're making our way all the way to the other side of the house, which I think for homeowners and guests, it's nice to have that separation of space. For a lot like this, it's really narrow. Oftentimes we'll do what I've called a train car floor plan. And what I mean by train car floor plan is that every room as you walk through the sequence is looking out at the view. So we're getting light in view. We're in the kitchen now, light in view. And with this transition hallway with a powder room off of it also has light view. And then we end in the guest suite. So guests have privacy. They're near the kitchen. They have their own room, but they also get this great view looking out.
I love the way these windows go floor to ceiling in here as well. You don't have the same large piece of glass like you do in the primary bedroom, but it still, especially with that corner, gives you such a great view out to the lake beyond. So you'll see this room has the same really beautiful blues and grays that you've seen throughout the first floor. And we've started to bring in these very sweet Nile and York fabrics in the bedding, in some of the throw pillows. We have this pretty trim from Rogers and Goff again. So we've really tried to make this room feel like your grandmother's house in a way, like it's sweet, even though we're in this amazing, more modern home. I think it helps make the edges a little softer. So let's go into the guest bathroom down this hallway. You'll see, again, there's lots of these surface sliding doors to separate spaces. We have the Starfire glass again on the door into the shower and into the toilet closet.
One thing to point out, we also have these great pocket doors. So we try to think through when a guest is staying here, it's like a great hotel suite. And so you're able to, if one spouse wakes up earlier, the other person's still in bed, you can pull this off, have total privacy back in here, have quietness, and separate yourself from the other person.
One thing I love is having drapes near a bathtub. And I don't know what it is, but it's something about the softness at the tub. You've obviously got to have privacy at a tub. People will say, oh, but they'll get wet. We used an indoor-outdoor sheer for these drapes here. So as you can tell, with the landscaping, you still have a lot of privacy. We have 2 vanities in this space. And again, I thought that this was such an interesting space architecturally, the way it creates a point back behind these vanities. And then these medicine cabinets, which basically look like they're sitting on the counter, are built in. So you have room to lay out your things, you have plenty of space, and then we left it open at the bottom. So it's a little bit of an unexpected layout for a vanity.
Well, it reinforces that architecture should always have a point.
So let's sneak into the powder room here. Powder rooms are great spaces in order to do something really dramatic. So in here, we stained the wood walls ebony. Ken and I found this antique sink in High Point, which is full of really beautiful colors and veining. And we were able to custom fit it to this space. Another really interesting thing in this powder room is this wonderful art installation. The artist is named Pam Brewer, and she's local to Linville, and she does these really interesting pottery leaves. And the homeowner had the idea, why don't we do a whole collection of them on the wall? And I love the way they pop out on this dark surface.
So now we're headed into the mudroom. And for us, oftentimes these behind the scenes spaces get a little bit neglected architecturally. And the irony is it's also where a homeowner spends a lot of time. So in this case, we've elevated it where the homeowner has her desk in here. She has a great sink for doing flowers and flower arrangements. She's got a place to hang her hats and put her shoes, and also lots of storage, but with beautiful oak cabinetry that we've all stained. So it feels like an elevated space, even though it does a lot of utility for the homeowner.
You still see the same stained wood, the same ebony staining on the cabinetry. So it does sort of introduce you to what's to come in the rest of the house. There's also a washer and dryer that's hidden here. You wouldn't even know it was here until you opened it up. So it's great. So if people are coming through this room to get into the house, you can conceal this. One of my favorite things in this room is this really amazing sheer drapery by Pollock. I found it to be super unique because it's a plaid, but yet it's a sheer plaid, and you can see how it has all of these little punctuations in it.
And you can see on the flooring, we did bluestone flooring so that it is more rustic and people are able to come in the side entrance because you're in the mountains. So if there's a mess and you need to filter somebody before they come in the house, this is where that happens. So again, it's utility, but also elevated.
I would say home is like being around your best friend. It is where you can really be honest, be open, be emotional. You can get messy. I think the most wonderful homes are the ones that feel like they've been lived in and things have happened there and it's okay, and that they have only gotten better with time, and maybe they're not so perfect, but they just feel warm and cozy, and they really reflect the people that are living there.
Yeah, and I would piggyback on that, and I would say it's, to me, authenticity of the person reflected in their home. You know, I find when we do houses that people are creating because of somebody they want to be or some dream or aspiration that, you know, maybe is them, maybe it's not, isn't as successful as somebody that really kind of knows themselves, and that house becomes an extension of who they are. And that warms my heart. Is what I look for in people and in homes, is this comfort with yourself is also extended as a comfort within the home. And I love when it feels authentic and congruent and of one person and an extension of them. And to me, that's what makes, I would say, a successful home.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.